Hello and welcome back to another video where I am filming in a hotel room because I am not at home and needed to get this done. Yay! So today I'm going to talk about the scariest books I've ever read. Horror and spooky season is coming up quick and I'm not like super into Halloween or anything. I mean, it's fine. Unpopular opinion, I think, around these parts, but I read horror all the time. I love horror all year long, so I just wanted to do a video of the absolute scariest horror books that I've ever read. These are not necessarily like my favorite horror books of all time, but obviously they're all good. And these are all books that just really gave me the heebie-jeebies, and I hope that you will find something to really give you the creeps this season. So let's get started. Now, would this even be a complete list without some Stephen King? No. The answer is no. And I had to narrow it down, so let's start with The Shining. So this is a story that is a tale as old as time. I feel like most people are pretty familiar with at least somewhat of the premise. It's about a man named Jack who is an alcoholic. He's very much trying to refrain from drinking, and he gets a job as like the winter caretaker at the Overlook Hotel, which is in Colorado. And so it gets very snowy and cold and isolated. But he gets this job opportunity to move with his family, his wife Wendy, and his son Danny, to go up to this resort, but that's completely snowed in. And Danny has something that he eventually calls the shine, where he can just like communicate and see things with his mind. And while that is obviously a huge part of the story, this is kind of watching Jack slowly kind of unravel, start like hallucinating, and just while he's trying so hard not to drink, and while this creepy hotel things are happening, and it's very much like what's real, what's not, what am I imagining? And I mean, I feel like, you know, I don't want to say anything else in case you haven't read this or seen the movie, but even if you've seen the movie, you got to read the book. It's very different and it's absolutely incredible and one of the most terrifying books that I've ever read. Another Stephen King book that absolutely scared me to death is Misery. And this was one that is scary in a different way because this is not like spooky ghosts and haunted house. This is like human horror. This is the horrible things that like we can do to another human. So this is about an author named Paul Sheldon who is driving in the mountains, also in Colorado, and he ends up getting in a car accident, like flipping off the road. He should be dead. He wakes up in the bedroom of someone's house. Now, he finds out that this is Annie Wilkes, who is his self-proclaimed biggest fan, and she's like, I'm gonna nurse you back to health. He is like completely, his legs are broken, he can't move, he is stuck in this room, and he's like, I need to get out of here, what's going on? But it is also a horrible snowstorm, so his car is like buried in the snow, so nobody really even knows that he's missing, and things go sideways because Annie Wilkes is a little cuckoo bananas. So this one is just, when you think you have seen it all, wow. And if you've seen another one, if you've seen the movie, which is fantastic and you absolutely should see, there's a scene that's really scary in the movie that's even worse in the book. So just keep in mind, this is not for the faint of heart, but if you want to be scared, Misery's a great pick. Just getting these Stephen King ones out of the way, the next one is Pet Sematary. This is a really, you know, one of his most popular books. This is like classic Stephen King, and this one is not just scary, but really, really sad. So bear that in mind. I think that this is actually a great horror book for me to read this Halloween because I have been really enjoying, well, enjoying's an overstatement. I've been really finding companionship and comfort in other books about death and grieving. So this is a best of both worlds. This is about a man named Lewis who moves to Maine with his wife and two kids. The house that they move into is on this very busy highway, and their neighbor across the street, Judd, is like, hey guys, just like be very careful because this is a very busy highway and you have two little kids. So Judd and Lewis become really good friends, and he ends up taking him on like this walk through a pathway in the woods where they get to what there's a sign that says Pet Cemetery. If you're wondering why cemetery is spelled with an S and just wrong in general, it is because on this sign, it is spelled that way because it's like where kids go to bury their pets. Without giving away too much of the story, something bad happens and the cemetery is maybe not as innocent as it seems. So I will leave it at that. But this one is just, it's a really beautiful story. But like I said, it's heartbreaking. Beautiful by itself is not a good adjective. It's beautiful and terrifying. So yes, definitely one to pick up. And I really enjoyed the movie that came out just a few years ago. So, I mean, I know that there was one like a long time ago, but this one was very good. I haven't seen the other, so I can't speak on that. But book first, always. And the last Stephen King book on this list is Needful Things. So this one I just read back in January. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was so scary though. So this takes place in Castle Rock, Maine, which is one of the places he sets a bulk of his books. This new guy comes to town. His name is Leland Gaunt, and he opens up this shop called Needful Things. And he is a little bit weird right off the bat, but he ends up luring people into his store because in the window is, no matter what it is, like your most desired thing is going to be right there. So if you're walking by and all you want is like this particular painting and you just like get entranced by it, it's there. If it's a Sandy Koufax rookie card, it might just be like right there in the window. And it kind of puts a spell on people where they come in and are like, I'll do anything for this, I want this. And he says, oh no, I don't want anything from you. I just want, you know, whatever changes in your pocket, and then you owe me a favor later on. And this ends up happening to everybody in town, and the gifts or the things that they purchase that they have desired so much kind of become something that puts them in sort of a trance, a different mindset. And so what happens is, without giving too much away, this man is maybe not the nicest man that he seemed to be on the outside, and he starts having the people in the town do tricks that are very mean to each other, and it kind of just escalates. There's a lot of different characters because we see a lot of different people going into the shop and having this man kind of take advantage of their brainwashing. But it's just amazing. I ate this one up. It's really long, but it's so worth it and super scary. The next one that scared me to death is All the Sinners Bleed by S.A. Cosby. This is one that came out, I think, like 2-ish years ago, and maybe just last year, it doesn't matter. And I loved it. I ate it up. It was so scary. So this is kind of a little more focused on the crime side of things. It is about a sheriff. His name is Titus Crown, and he goes back to his hometown in rural Virginia to take care of his father. He really does want to change the justice system. He wants to make it better for everyone and have people like not be afraid of cops anymore. He wants to actually do good. But his first big thing that he has to deal with is a school shooting where Black children are the target. We get your classic Southern Gothic horror. We get some super religious zealots. We have like a neo-Nazi sort of group that's in there. It's just like super scary. And I thought it was so good. S.A. Cosby also wrote Razorblade Tears, which is a really good book as well. I feel like that's definitely more on the thriller side. I guess you could say this is too, but to me this read like a horror book, and I thought it was so good. Sorry guys, I know you are sick to death of me talking about this book, but We Spread by Ian Reid. This is a book that is more of a social horror, social commentary, but it's definitely, to me, horror because I'm still shaken by the things that happen in this book, and I've said it before, it like unlocked a new fear in me. So this is about a woman named Penny who she's an artist and she is getting to be elderly. Her partner passes away, and she did not know this, but her partner had set up like a home for her to go live in because he didn't want her to be living on her own. She's very resistant to the idea, but one day she has a big fall and the landlord is like, yeah, you can't live here by yourself anymore. So she goes into this home, and it's very strange at first. There's only like 6 or 7 residents, but they're all artists, and you know, she's like, okay, I can give it a chance. But weird stuff starts happening. She starts losing blocks of time. She starts being like unsure where she is, and she feels like she's a very sound mind. So she's like, am I losing it, or am I being gaslit, or like what's going on? And it definitely brought out a new fear for me of like aging and being old and forgotten in a home, I guess. But anyways, I this book is one of my all-time favorites ever, and obviously had to make the list of the scariest horror books I've ever read. The next one is Mary by Nat Cassidy. I read this on someone else's recommendation from BookTube, and I cannot for the life of me remember who it was. But I thought it was so scary and so good. And I mean, I don't remember like tiny details, but I remember you must read the author's note at the end, but wait till you're done reading it. But I remember that being very, very important. So just take note. So this is about a woman named Mary who she's getting older and she gets fired from her job, so she ends up moving back to her hometown. Now she's kind of hitting menopause, getting hot flashes, she's like very achy, but she also is having some weird stuff happen. Like she can't walk past a mirror without passing out, and she's having voices in her head that are like telling her to do really, really bad things. But once she moves back to her hometown, she starts to have these absolutely terrifying images like come into her mind, like mutilated bodies, and it just keeps getting worse until she finds that these are basically visions from like a serial killer that had already happened, and it gets crazy. So yeah, this is definitely a scary one. This one's kind of long, but like totally worth it. And yeah, it goes some crazy places, but really, really good if you want a good scare. Next is The Devil Takes You Home by Gabino Iglesias. This is one that if you don't like body horror, definitely skip. It was a little much even for me. I was kind of like cringing, and there's some imagery in this book that still like lives in my head rent free, and I read this like a year and a half ago, so keep that in mind. So this is about a man named Mario who in the first opening pages, his daughter, who is young, she's a child, she gets diagnosed with, I think, cancer, and she ends up dying. And as he and his wife are mourning and just absolutely just saddled with these huge medical bills, he decides to kind of do one last job to kind of make all this money back so that he can pay off the money that he owes, and is, he's trying not to lose his house and all of this. In the meantime, he and his wife have divorced, because I know that's not uncommon when they lose a child, but it's still real sad. Basically, he decides to take this job he's offered to hijack a cartel's cash shipment before it hits Mexico. So this is like obviously incredibly dangerous, incredibly illegal, and he's like, my life's in shambles anyways, so why not? Let's get some money. There's definitely some mysticism. There is a lot of Spanish. I don't know if the book comes with like a guide for these like common phrases. I got it from Book of the Month, and it did include that. I think it was really handy because there are a lot of like sentences and stuff in Spanish, which I thought was cool and really added to the authenticity of the book, because it does mainly take place in Mexico or in like heavily Spanish speaking parts of the United States. But yeah, this one is really, really scary, and like the body horror, like I said, so scary, still lives in my head. I still think about this book all the time, and if you are looking for something to chill you to the bone, pick this one up. And the last book on this list is one I did recently talk about in my favorite books of the summer video, which I will link above. And that is One of Our Kind by Nicola Yoon. So again, this is definitely more like a social horror. This isn't like axe murderers or anything like that, but it is still just absolutely terrified me, chilled me to the bone. This is about a Black family who moves to this community called Liberty, which is all Black, and they kind of have their own, community. And the main character, whose name I forget, is so excited to like be around like-minded people, like people who understand her social justice aspirations, I guess, and like really she wants to get involved in the community, and this is going to be so great. But once she gets there, she realizes that like they're not all really into it. They're all like, oh, Black Lives Matter, that's silly, like we're fine over here. And she's she's finding that everyone is kind of like that except for one other person that she does become quick friends with. The people in like charge of this community start asking her, "Oh, you got to go up to the spa. There's this big spa in the community." And she's like, "Okay, like eventually when I have time, I guess." But everyone is like so into this, and things start getting kind of weird, and that's where I'm going to leave it off. But it is just, I mean, I still am like, yeah, that was not a full sentence, but like I just got such chills, and this book really was just terrifying. And I know that some people are not loving this for the way it ends, but I thought that was like part of the terror is how this book ends. So do with that what you will, but I can't recommend it enough. I really want to reread some of these now because it's been a while. So I hope you found a new book to scare you out of your pants this October. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, I would love it if you would, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!